Hi, this is Mark from Dragon Force.
This is Adrian Cowan from Seven Spires.
This is Taylor Washington from Paladin.
This is Nora from Battle Beast.
Hey, this is Tucker from Throne of Iron, and you are listening to the Great Metal Debate Podcast.
Welcome back, music fans. The Metal Debate Podcast returns with another amazing metal artist interview. I'm pleased to be talking with members of one of my favorite U.S. bands, melodic power metalers, Graveshadow. Today I'm joined by Will, Rachel, and Aaron. Thank you guys for coming on the Great Metal Debate.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
So we're here in Madison, Wisconsin, prior to Graveshadow's performance at the 2023 Mad with Power Fest. As a regular attendee, I always get a response form afterwards, including, who would you like to see on next year's bill? Every year, I always write your all's name in.
Thank you.
Yeah, and finally it's come to fruition. From your perspective, how did it come to be that you all are on this festival?
It was actually Lords of the Trident were on when they were on tour earlier this year. They had a Sacramento stop, and they invited us out to play. And it wasn't like explicitly said, but it kind of felt like a soft audition for the festival with the message that we got. That show was amazing. Then we did Hyperspace later on that tour up in Canada, and Lords were on that as well. And I think that what ended up happening, the way that we got the spot was... somebody ended up dropping off, and Ty shot me an email, and I think I responded in like 2 minutes. I think I called all you guys like in a rush, and then was like, "Are we doing it?" And Aaron actually was like, "Yes, whatever it takes." So that's how we ended up here.
And you said you all were on the same bill with Lords out there?
Yeah, and at Hyperspace, Lords were they direct support for that? I forget their order in the lineup. Do you guys remember?
I know they were more towards Ex Mortis. I know was headlining.
Yeah.
I think they may have been third or fourth from the top.
From the top, yeah. But they were so great. Like, my favorite part about getting to play with them in Sacramento, in our hometown, at a venue called the Boardwalk, which is like a 300 cap room. It's a pretty intimate setting. But then getting to see them perform at the Rickshaw, and they put on an amazing show regardless. But they pulled out like all these cool little tricks and all these things. And I think my favorite thing was Ty had this like neon lit up guitar thing that like spun in a circle like really fast that he did in Canada, and I was sold. Like they were my favorite performance.
Yeah.
They're on tonight with you guys, and it's killer lineup this year, headlined by your former tour mates, Unleash the Archers. I'm curious how cool it's been for you guys who know Unleash the Archers to see their rise to success, and then also to what extent do you see what they've done as a vision for what you'd like to see Graveshadow accomplish?
I would say for me just surreal seeing them get this far, because that tour we did was all of ours first tour. I mean, we've all been playing local shows for years, and I remember getting the phone call from Will for that tour specifically. How do you feel about going on tour? And I'm like, would I? Mm-hmm. And then at this point, I had no idea who the band was going to be. And then he just name dropped Anvil and the Archers. I'm like, sold. I'm going. And they were fantastic then, and just seeing them just gradually headline their own shows, larger venues, to playing festivals like 70,000 Tons of Metal.
And they're on Wacken.
Wacken is here too. Yeah, that's the other one I was thinking of. So yeah, it's really amazing just to see them grow, and it's very inspiring as well. Even musically, they've changed a lot too, incorporate a lot more synth, which as a keyboardist as well, I really admire that.
I'm actually going to build off of like what he said. I think for me, it's been dramatic. It's just been so inspiring. Apex and Abyss are honestly probably like my top two records of like the past 10 years as far as like metal is concerned. I think that they do such a fantastic job of like genre blending and melody building, and it all just works like so. I remember when Abyss came out, I was at work. I used to work in a cannabis lab, and my job at the time, I was just a tech. I was just putting little teeny tiny babies into soil plugs, and I got a notification that, UTA put out a new album. I'm like, yeah, that's what we're listening to today. I had to like put my tools down like when the opening track started, and I was just like, this is gonna be a ride. And I think that I think as far as like what we've learned from them, that tour for us was such like it was all about growth and learning. And I think that kind of having them almost like modeling the way to an extent of like what to do, like, you know, watching Brittany kind of like call the shots as she's like getting everything arranged and set up, and you know, getting to chat with Grant and Andrew after the shows, and just watching Scott do what he does like every night. I don't know who their bassist name is, so I feel bad about that. But it just kind of watching all of that, I was absorbing, you know, how do you run a show effectively? Like how do you be professional? How do you show up? How do you do what you need to do? And then it's funny because it was not intentional, but when we put out our last record, I think there were like 3-4 reviews that kept comparing us to UTA. And definitely not intentional. I do think that like by osmosis we were influenced by them. Because the same thing happened when we did the second tour with Anvil and Night Demon. When we got back and we were writing our second record, we started writing just a bunch of like traditional metal like riffs into our music. And I think that it just kind of happened by osmosis. It definitely wasn't intentional, but I will take that comparison any day of the week. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Again, it's a great bill, so many good bands. I do want to turn to you, Rachel, because yesterday I was here early for the show, and I saw that you were here very early, like you wanted to catch all the acts. Tell me a little bit about that. As a fan, sometimes I think, well, musicians on stage, they're kind of above being fans, but it's obvious, and I saw you guys hanging out as well, that you are all big fans of music and wanted to see what the other bands were doing.
Yeah, we all are fans. That's where we all start. And so I find that it's really, really, really important that I support all of the musicians that are playing. One, because they're good, and two, because I'm not above being a fan. That's kind of where I started, and that's where I will always be. I am on that stage, but I am also one of, those people within the crowd. And I never would want to disconnect myself from that. And I think, both of these guys feel the exact same way. Mm-hmm. That's where our roots are, and that's never going to go away. I will always be a metal fan from, the first show that I attended. I watched Kicks, in Maryland, out in the crowd. And that feeling has never gone away. That support is really important as a singer. Being visible is really important. And remembering that, you started as a fan, you'll stay a fan. And we just, have had the privilege and the honor of crossing over onto the stage as well.
I'll be honest, something that really excites me as a fan is when I see somebody up on stage, and then later on in the evening, I see, like, they're right beside me banging their head and pumping their fists and getting into the music. It just deepens that bond of camaraderie,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the nail on the head, like right there, what you just said, like camaraderie. It's a larger community, right? I mean, and especially obviously, here, Mad with Power, there's a lot of bands that played yesterday, a lot of bands that played today. Those folks are here too, but there's also just a lot of folks out there that just came to see the show. And I wouldn't be surprised if half of them were in their own bands,
exactly,
and doing their own thing. Like it's kind of interesting how metal went from a super super-commercial thing in the United States to almost like a niche thing in the United States. And that's not to say that there's not a big market for it or anything like that, but I think the landscape is a lot different, and y'all got to support each other. It's kind of what it's about, right? Yeah, we're just here for each other.
I feel like that's what Mad with Power Fest has always been about, with the new wave of nice metal bands, as Ty likes to put it.
So
and he really fosters that sense of community here. He always has, and so we have to play that part too, and we love playing that part.
Yeah.
We're very grateful.
Yeah.
So the last time I saw Graveshadow live, it was with your previous lineup, and you guys have spoken extensively about those changes and why they happened.
Yeah.
I am curious for you, William and Aaron, when thinking about putting together the new lineup, how much were you concerned with replicating what you'd done before versus looking for great musicians who would bring fresh, new ideas? There had to be kind of a tension there.
Yeah. You mind if I jump in? If I start?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
I think that it was kind of contentious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was kind of contentious when we were putting everything back together, because I think that there was a lot of healing, and Aaron and I are really tight, but I think that when we deal with hurt, our initial emotional response is a little different sometimes. Yeah. And to be completely honest, Aaron was dragging me along with him. for probably about the first like year and a half after we started putting everything back together. I know that we were hyper focused on finding the right singer.
Yeah.
And when I love telling the story of when you sent me Rachel's audition, where he sent me her audition tape, her audition tracks. And I listened to 30 seconds, and turned it off. Called him and said, "I don't care what you have to do, get her." And we were at that time we were just talking about doing something different.
Yeah, it wasn't even meant to be a Graveshadow reboot. It was just going to be something Will and I were going to do as a whole new project. Because at that point we had played with bands like Serenia. We had also opened for Taria, and we also have been really getting into bands like Beast in Black and Powerwolf. So that power metal-esque kind of sound was definitely there. In our interests, and we wanted to embrace that.
And it was also kind of like the logical writing progression from like the end of the Ambitions Price writing sessions, because like I mentioned a little earlier, we wrote that record shortly after we did our second tour with Anvil and Night Demon. We did the record with Armand from Night Demon, and the last like 2 or 3 songs were going in kind of like that power traditional.
Yeah,
we knew that, because I know Aaron a little bit more than me, but we're definitely like fans of like the symphonic doom stuff, the symphonic melodic metal. We're both really into that, and I knew that it was important to Aaron that part of the music was maintained.
Yeah.
And but we also wanted to do something different with the guitar work, and I don't know how deliberate it actually was. I feel like it just kind of happened.
It completely did.
Yeah, I don't know that we had a game plan. We knew we wanted good people. We knew we wanted good people. We knew we wanted good players, and we knew that we wanted to try to at least. I know it was important to me, and I know it was important to you too. I think I was a little more hyper focused on it, but it was important to me that we tried to rebuild the sense of community within the band.
Yeah.
Which that's a journey. That takes time, and the previous lineup had its ups and downs, its bumps, our disagreements, and some infighting. This group has gone through the same, and it's all kind of part of the process, right? I think the thing for me when I became really convinced that we had something special was probably at the end of our first tour, and it was not because it was a perfect tour. It was because there were so many challenges, and it felt so reminiscent to me of that very first tour with UTA. It felt like almost the exact same. I had the exact same emotional responses, same headspace, everything, but we got through it. And it was the fact that we got through it and everybody was still like, okay, well, when's the next one? That I was like, okay, all right, yeah. Do you want to add anything? I kind of prattled there for a while.
No, you basically hit it right in the nail. And I remember kind of going back to what you were saying when we got Rachel's audition, because I was honestly anxious for his reaction, and my girlfriend was right there when I sent it to him, and we were waiting for the response. So she saw the whole thing. I put him right on speakerphone, and she heard everything. So if there was a witness, and I could say, yep, this is all true, it's her. And so that was one check mark. And then for me, the thing I know I was going to be really picky about was, aside from a good vocals, was also finding a solid drummer.
Yeah.
Because in California, and honestly anywhere if you're trying to form a metal band, the hardest person to find is a drummer. Nothing against bassists. Lucy is a fantastic bassist, and honestly has been a godsend for us on the tech side of things.
Yeah,
she's a tech wizard. Our backing track unit would not be the same without her. Even just some of our instruments as well, because she will casually maintain her bass and just mess around on ours
too.
So she's if we had a band roadie, it is her. So she's way more than just a bassist.
But we're also lucky that she's a hell of a player. There's one more thing I wanted to add about the story of Rachel's audition tape is, like I had mentioned, we were just kind of talking about doing something else. And when we got in touch with Rachel, we still weren't talking about Graveshadow. It was when I heard her audition tape, I told the other half of that was, I don't care what you have to do, get her. We're continuing. We're going to keep going. Which was also... it was that, and the kind of the domino that fell before that was I had a conversation with our label head, Marco Barbary at M Theory, and he had called me, and the gist of the conversation was, you haven't done anything in a year and a half, and your record is still selling. What are you doing? Like, are you going to do something else? And he told me that, former president of Century Media and all that other, I remember one of the things that he said to me that really stuck out to me was he said that, a lineup change is a really hard thing to come back from. But in his experience and what he'd seen throughout his, decades in the industry was it's the ones that stick it through that tend to actually accomplish what it is that they want to accomplish. And these guys can attest, I am hard-headed and stubborn, and I will bash my head against the wall, even when it's bad for me. So having that encouragement from him, and then having such a very strong singer present themselves in Rachel, it kind of became a no question. Like, we need to keep going.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask Rachel about that audition tape, but before that, one follow-up, something that just jumps out to me. Again, coming from a fan perspective, to what extent did you guys think about, or did you at all, which I could understand if not, the impact on fans moving on from the Graveshadow name and starting something new? I'm sure it might be nice to kind of clear the deck and start anew, but you're also starting new with fandom as well.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like an exact one-to-one comparison, but I think about Sabaton and Civil War. Civil War is made up of all like the original members of Sabaton, and Sabaton still carried on. Sound didn't change like terribly dramatically, kind of the same way that ours did, but fans do make connections with members. Yeah. I think the most contentious part about that was trying to figure out the vocal situation. Yeah. Like, it was
where you wanted to go with vocals?
There was this kind of like, there was like, there was a little bit of kind of not really having a sense of true north at first of what we wanted to do in that department. And I know I was very hyper-focused on it because that was, previously it was the growls that would get called out a lot and the ability to shift like in between and all that good stuff. But I think ultimately what it really is it's about playing to your strengths. And, we still have that element, and we still have that element in our music. I think what it really was, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what it really was about trying to create something new that still felt familiar. Yeah. But we knew it was going to be different. There was no way that it couldn't be different. And the other thing that I'll say is, I might mess up the album name, but what is it? Creator's Golden Age record, the one that's a little bit more like gothy, industrial, and everything like that. That's my favorite Creator record. I like that record more than anything else that they've put out. Like, I like their other stuff too, but bands evolve, bands change, and you can't hold new people. And this is a lesson that I have been learning, absolutely. And I think I'm still learning it in some regards, is you can't hold people accountable to the past. Exactly. And it's that's been a learning curve for me. I think it's been a learning curve for you too, to some extent. But yeah, I don't know, do you have anything that you want to add?
Well, kind of along what's popping in my head is when we released Gwynplaine, because that was the first single with this whole new lineup. And it was met with almost a 50-50 response. Yeah. With people that were like, yay, Graveshadow's back. And then there was the other half going, one comment I remember seeing on the YouTube that kind of cracks me up a little bit, which was, this song is actively breaking my heart.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I remember that one.
And I mean, and I'm not trying to point the finger at this person, but I'm just like, well, I guess we meant something that much to a fan. Well, sorry. Yeah. But then we released Soldier 34 a little after, and it was almost a complete flip. Yep. Everyone was all like, okay, we're down for this.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, there was a lot of like, oh, it's power metal now. Like, I don't know if I'm so much interested in it. And I think at a certain point, at least for me, you kind of get some thick skin about that. Because I'll be honest, our first record got eviscerated in reviews. Like, it was probably like 70-30, 70% bad and 30% good.
I say, though, it got a lot of attention, which to me may be more important than the actual content of the reviews.
I remember we got so many reviews from Germany calling it like Disney metal and like all this other stuff, like just absolutely ripping it apart. And that was really hard to deal with when it was happening, but I'm almost glad it happened, because now I read a review and I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, if you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But I think the other thing too is that, what I think I've learned how to do with that is, you read the bad reviews and you read the critiques, and as long as it's not the one that we got for this third record where they were mad that Aaron and I have long hair and we take care of it. They called us smug
shampooed males.
What?
That was one of the first reviews we got for the record too.
Dude didn't even talk about the music. He just talked about our image. And it's but I think that, but at the same time, like, we saw like a huge spike in like Facebook followers, Instagram followers, and things like that after the record. Not even before the record came out. Like, even before the record came out, we saw a huge spike in that. And it's kind of evened out as the way social media does and all that good stuff. But it's
Well, I want to get to the record in a moment, but before that, I do have to ask the question about what was the content of your audition tape, and did you realize that it would cause such angst and thought when it was received?
No, I really didn't. I had no idea really what I was walking into. I was set up with Aaron, a friend of ours. He's wonderful. He's my best friend. And he said, you need to check out this singer. And so Aaron had reached out to me. I was in 3 bands at the time. I was in 3, including Diamorte, if you're familiar with Diamorte, with James Jordan. So that was, really cool, and I was really hyper-focused on that. And I said, I can't do another band. I don't have the time for another band, but fuck it, I'm just going to go ahead and send in my audition. And so really what I did was I took some of my older material that I had done with a band that I was with for about 5 years in Chicagoland. And I sent that over, and it was, the most high-range, belty, power metal-y stuff that I had, where I was like, yeah, this sounds awesome. And so I sent it over to him, and, they kind of came back saying that they were really interested, and I had no idea. I just thought this was going to be another project. And I said, well, I know who Graveshadow is. And I, kind of found that out as we were working through the audition process. And I was like, okay, I need to get in on this because they have a really good reputation. And I think this could be a really good move. And I remember super nervous, redid one of their older songs. I did Hero of Time.
Cool.
So there does exist a version of me doing Hero of Time.
I'd love to hear that, because I love that song. Yeah,
it was awesome. It was painstaking. I had to learn all of those harmonies and really hear them and understand them. And so I sent that over, and I was so nervous. And I remember he called me that day, and it was like the movie Rockstar. It was like a rock star moment. And he calls, and he's like, "So, you want to be in the band then?" And it was during that conversation he said, I think I really want to make this Graveshadow, and I about shit myself in my house, and it was really cool. And it took all my focus. It was my hyper focus from then on. It was just something that really hooked me, and it was really special.
And you made that transition from, well, I'm just going to try this, I'm in a bunch of other bands, to this is now my focus. Like, what flipped the switch for you that...
To be honest with you, I think it was partly that I had gotten a taste of the working relationship with both of them, because they're wonderful. They're wonderful humans, and that doesn't always happen when you're in a band setting. And 2...
This is my heterosexual life partner.
And 2, I got the opportunity to really dive deep into the catalog, understand what they put out before, understand that I could have a really cool role in this, and I got to really break down Hero of Time and go, okay, so this was the lead, this was the mid, this was the low, and this shit is so cool. And that's really what hooked me, was really diving in deep to a song and learning it. And I tell all of my students that you don't know the song that you are tasked with learning until you really dive deep into it. You don't understand the genre that you're tasked with learning until you dive deep into it. And I did, and I said, yeah, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. So, definitely credit to the prior version of Graveshadow before that, credit to Heather Michelle. It was really, really, really cool learning that and being a part of that for my audition process. And I said, I want to do that. I think I can really fit in well.
You did.
Yeah, swimmingly.
That's awesome. Now, the band is from Sacramento, and you reside in Ohio. What challenges did that provide? Obviously, they were so impressed with you that, they thought, we're going to make this work regardless.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would say the biggest challenge is that I'm not there every single week rehearsing with them. So that makes it really difficult. And we've worked around it. I'm continually teaching and rehearsing on my own. And so that's the rehearsing challenge is a huge challenge, and, the time zone challenge as well, and just making sure that we're communicating effectively. I think that we've had moments where communication definitely could have been better, but we're still learning and we're still understanding each other. So really, that's the biggest problem. But we do live in a modern age, and we live in an internet age. So as long as I can rehearse on my own, and I'm rehearsing regularly, and I'm in regular contact with one of these guys, or Lucy or Bones or whoever, then we can overcome those challenges. And really, the way that it works is I rehearse on my own regularly. They rehearse on their own regularly. We have regular check-ins, and sometimes every 3 months or so, I'm flying over to California, whether that be for a photo shoot, for recording, for the start of a tour, and we are rehearsing pretty heavy, and we've overcome it. And I think that has a lot to do with a lot of discipline on their end and on mine, and knowing that we've got our shit together, even though we're however many 2,000 miles away or however far apart we are. We believe in what we do, and we believe in each other, and we believe that we know our shit. Yep. And that's just the way we overcome it.
I think what also helped is that Aaron and I pretty quickly agreed when we were going to start it again that our focus was going to be on touring. Yeah, our focus was going to be on touring, and our focus was going to be on things like Mad with Power. And so when you're not trying to pepper in, one-offs, makes it easier. Because you would always just fly her out a couple days ahead of time, do a few rehearsals, hit the road, go do the deal, come home, she goes home, and, leave her alone for a day or two and then start bothering her again.
Yeah.
So speaking of touring, you all did go out on a run of shows earlier this year with friends of the podcast Paladin and also friends of the podcast Ex Mortis. Tell us a little bit about that tour and, more important, the response to you guys going out there and playing live.
There were some surreal responses. I remember, I think one of the most interesting ones was Spokane, Washington, because you get there and it was just kind of empty, and then a lot of the crowd was more, what do you expect, a thrash metal scene. Oh. Yeah, very thrashy audience. And they actually really, really loved us, especially our bassist. I remember we got off the stage and everyone just kept chanting in the audience, bassist, bassist.
Yeah. The Pacific Northwest loves Lucy.
Awesome. They do. I think we had a really good response to that tour, and it was a little unexpected because I believe what ended up happening was Immortal Guardian was slated for that spot in that tour, really? Yeah. And they did have to drop off of that tour. And so we got a call from Mark O'Barbary, and can you do this? And we said, yes, we can. And that's, that's half of it really, is just being ready and available and, ready to go. We've gotten both that tour, Hyperspace, and Mad with Power Fest for all of those that same reason, because we were just ready to fill that spot. But no, we got a really good response, both with the bands that we were touring with and from the audience. Like he said, that audience was a lot more of an extreme, they were extreme fans of metal. And so we were like, we're pretty melodic, but I mean, we saw crowd surfing up in Canada during our set. They took to it really, really well, and we felt very accomplished and very happy with that. I'm very happy with that tour, with two incredible bands, tight bands. I am in love with Paladin. I'm in love with Exmortis. It was a really cool experience.
And all good guys. They're all
really just decent people, wonderful people, very helpful. Can't say any bad things.
You know, for me, and it was for reasons outside of our control, it's just logistical issues, but I was anxious that whole tour because of hyperspace, and it was because we had to fill in people. And I have never gotten on stage in the entire time that this band has been touring without him. And that was really hard. It was really, really hard. I remember calling him because we're pretty strict about image, but we're both Berserk fans. And I was just going to get on stage in my Berserk shirt, and I was just like, no, I'm going to call Aaron first. I'm going to make sure that he's going to be okay with that. And I called him, and at first, I told him, I was like, dude, it makes me feel like you're here with me. It's like, that's the reason why I wanted to do it. And I ended up not doing it at the last minute because it was just a little too baggy. It was just a little too baggy to get on stage in. But that was really hard for me. Personally, I credit Aaron a lot with, dragging, on it legitimately that first year after when we're putting it back together, for dragging me along. I was dealing with a lot of things. My fiance and I had separated. I moved out of my house around that time. I had lost my job when the old lineup had kind of all fallen apart. So it was like a 1, 2, 3, 4 kick you down into the ground, and Aaron was there, awesome, the entire time, and it was an interesting challenge, I think, but at the same time, kind of like how Rachel's saying, I think it opened up the door for us to be here today, and I'm really looking forward to getting up there with you tonight.
Absolutely, I couldn't say it any better myself.
That's awesome. It's awesome to see when a band is also kind of like a family.
Absolutely.
So, I want to be cognizant of your time today, but I also want to take a little time to talk about your latest album, The Uncertain Hour. I reviewed it positively last year, but I'll admit it's grown on me since that time. I'm curious, with over a year having passed and the opportunity to play the songs live, how pleased are you with it? And are there any things that, looking back, you're like, I wish I could have changed this or that?
So I'm probably the one to point to this, because I've always considered that album my baby, mainly because a lot of the instrumentations I wrote, and that's kind of what Will was talking about when I was dragging his feet. Because towards the end of 2018, there was kind of that question if the group was going to continue, and even I was going through some hard stuff myself, so my coping mechanism was writing. And seeing the band kind of going different directions, I wrote, I think, 4 songs. And I basically said, hey, I have this batch of material, guys. Could we do something? Hopefully this will kind of light a spark. Unfortunately, it didn't work out as that spark I was expecting. But when Will still wanted to do music with me, I was like, well, I got this. Let's use it. And then when we decided to continue as Graveshadow, then there it was right there and then. So seeing those songs evolve from just basically therapy and then turning out to what it is meant a lot to me. And but at the same time, I was also kind of a stickler in the recording process because of how sentimental some of the structures were. So when some changes were suggested, I was very firm, like, no, you were not touching this. But in the long run, I'm glad it did, and that's something I'll definitely listen back going, yeah, I'm glad we made those changes, because they translate better live, and there's more, honestly, the fans like it as well.
I'd like to talk with you about all the songs, but I'll talk about just 2 of my faves. I really like Vengeance of Envy. You guys did a lyric video for that one. To me, it kind of has a little bit of the 80s, like, Point of Entry era Judas Priest vibe going on there, with the Graveshadow twist, of course. Tell me a little bit about that track, and particularly why you thought that was good for the lyric video treatment.
So I was going to chime in a little bit about that, because that one's also kind of special, because that's not one that I actually wrote, but it was one of the first ideas that I jammed out with Will and our old drummer, right when I was brand new in the band. And actually, yeah, Ben was there too. So it was my first like I said, full on jam. And unfortunately, it just kind of got shelved. I was hoping it was going to make it to Ambition's price, but I found a video of that Will put together of him playing the guitar parts, and then I used it as a means to basically write the rest of the song. And then it just came. And then it came to be from there. Yeah. And then, Will, if you want to chime in on anything else.
That was actually, I wrote Vengeance of Envy, most of the guitar. Aaron's got his fingerprints on it too. I think Soldier 34 and Vengeance, I think, are the two songs that that was the first time we collaborated together.
It really
those
was,
two.
yeah.
But Vengeance was written during the writing process for the first record. Like, that's how old that song is. Like, it's been around since then, and we just never found a place for it to fit in. But he floated the idea to me of wanting to resurrect that song. And I was still a little on the fence, but I was like, I don't know if it's going to be as strong like with the other material. And he said, well, let me work with it. And changed around the chorus. He put that really awesome harmony in the beginning. And I think just kind of like breathed a little bit of life into it. And so I was very, very happy with the way that it turned out. And you, lady, killed it with them vocals.
Absolutely.
The first time, I'm a very emotional person. Music makes me cry a lot. When I heard just the desk mix of her vocals, I was getting super teary-eyed about like the whole thing, just because it was so damn powerful, and the way that she wrote the lyrics for it were it struck a real big chord with me.
And you really come across as very emotive in that lyric video, which features you kind of doing some almost Halford-esque kind of moves.
Yeah, well, I mean, I will say that traditional metal has always been, kind of my sticking point, and that's kind of where I started. So I pulled a lot of traditional metal, a lot of Ann Wilson also to put on that track. But yeah, no, that's honestly my favorite off the record. So I'm really glad that you like that one, because I think it's the most straightforward and really true to my roots, to what I've done before Graveshadow, which is kind of really cool. We wrote that song. We wrote that song about a cartoon. It's called Full Metal Alchemist, and the relationship between a lieutenant and his care captain, and so that was really, really cool to kind of have that. I don't know, I just really liked the song. I didn't think that it was going to be one that was going to be really strong until I got into the vocal booth, and our engineer, his name is Justin, he plays in a band called Miss May I. He's a wonderful human.
Oh, yeah, I know that, yeah.
And we were in the vocal booth. I was in the vocal booth with him, and I would go through a take, and he'd go, you can do that better. Like, yeah. And I got it out of me, and I got that desk mic back, and I was like, yeah, this one. It was really cool.
That's awesome. Another favorite of mine, The Two Lived. It's Grave Somnium. That's what that is.
I love
So, is that a direction you guys might go, or is that just kind of a one-off?
So I personally would love to have, definitely not a direction, but just like one song to maybe in the future, just to keep a little bit of a homage of the Doom side that we carried out on the first two records. Insomnium is definitely one of my biggest influences as a musician. Sorry, getting emotional because I fucking love that album, Heart Like a Grave. Yeah, no, and I mean, you hear it in my voice because that's how hard, especially the title track of that song, Heart Like a Grave, really hit me. So I wanted to try to take that inspiration into us. We actually played it live for the first time last week.
Yeah, for your birthday.
And I guess that's why those emotions are hitting out.
Your passion in the song definitely comes across, both the performance and writing process.
I will add that was probably one of my favorite recording moments of the record, because he and I did the growls together. He did the growls. I was just there as a second set of ears. We were doing it in his other band, Nevayan's studio one night. And we were there till 2 in the morning?
Yeah.
Something like that. We were there till 2 in the morning doing that track, and kind of like how Rachel was just talking about how Justin was going nope, you can do that better. It's like I was doing that with him. I was going nope, you can do that one better. Nope, you need to pitch higher here and then fall here, and just going back and forth. And what was so cool about it is it was no, you need to do that better. Okay, I can do that better. And it was that was a lot of fun. Like it was a lot of fun, and I think in a lot of ways that was a bonding moment for us.
It absolutely was a bonding moment for us.
Yeah.
And actually, for some people, that was their least favorite on the record within the band. And part of that was also because I didn't have the orchestration set up. I remember Bones went to record that song, so since you love it, just imagine no orchestration.
No, I can't imagine.
Yeah,
that.
he recorded to just I think only the rhythm guitars.
Yes, that was it.
Yeah, so the lead wasn't there, the vocals. So he was just like, this song is boring as shit. And then I remember we had a photo shoot, and I was just finishing up the orchestrations. And I had Rachel and Bones at my house. And I'm like, oh, by the way, this is what it's going to sound like. And then they're like, oh, this is what it's supposed to be.
Your chorus is like in Two Lived. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah. Your chorus in Two Lived is one of my favorite moments on the entire record. Is that "We Are Demon and Pendragon." I love that line. It is so good. And yeah.
I'm glad you think so.
Yeah. It's awesome. It's about Howl's Moving Castle, if you didn't know.
So many good tracks on that album. I wanted to ask, there's video online, old video of Graveshadow with previous lineup performing an acoustic track at a record store. I remember when I first saw that, and I was so surprised at how well the Graveshadow sound translated. Is there, in the future, the possibility of a Graveshadow Unplugged?
I don't know. I'm not opposed to it.
I mean, Queensryche did it. Queensryche did it really well. So if Queensryche can do it, that's a A+ for me. I think we could definitely do it.
What I've been toying around with the idea of is taking some of the songs, and especially with how orchestral they are, is stripping them down as a string quartet. Damsel's Finesse in particular is one that I've been toying with, just stripping the orchestrations to just two violins, viola, and cello with Rachel's voice.
That would be cool.
That's it's something I want to do. I just need the time to arrange that and then send it to Rachel. Go have fun.
I think if we ever did it again, I think like the material on the third record is almost better suited for it. Because I remember when we got asked to do that we were like, what the hell are we gonna do? Like it was because so much of our stuff back then was just really driving really driving power chords, and it was kind of like how do we make that interesting without high gain and distortion, like. And I thought we did a really good job. We did. Was it, if I remember the way that went down, you played keys.
I played keys.
Roman and I did the guitar.
Yeah.
Ben did bass and Heather sang. And I think that was a good way to handle it. Now we might have just Bones do like a cajon or something like that if we were going to do it again. But
I would love that.
But it's the right circumstance. It would be really fun. I think it'd be fun to do something like that.
Right circumstance, right set list.
Yeah.
Well, I could talk to you guys for hours, but again, I do want to be cognizant of your time. So beginning to wrap up with you, following your performance at Mad with Power Fest, what are the band's plans for the remainder of 2023?
Writing. Yeah. Lots of writing. If the right offer comes out, then you might see us on the road again, but that's a big to be determined, I'll say. We have a couple songs that we just finished and demoing, and we got more to come. I have a lot of ideas that I want to present to everybody else. So let's get those. We want to get those solid before we do anything big again.
Yeah, I think it's like just really focusing on writing. I've been working with a few riff ideas. I haven't shown you yet.
No, he needs to get on that.
But it's like Aaron was just saying, we just demoed 2 songs with Kurt Vanderhoof from Metal Church down in Yucca Valley. Great experience.
Amazing experience. He's the nicest person.
He really is. But yeah, it's just kind of going to be, I think it's going to be that, kind of starting to figure out what the next record is going to sound like and, what we're going to do with it. Like Aaron was saying, if the right opportunity comes up, then, we'll play out live. But it's mostly just kind of going to be getting ready for next year, kind of seeing. There are a few things in the fire that we are not really at liberty to discuss right now. But hopefully, if they all pan out, 2024 is going to be really cool. It'll be cool regardless, but if what we have working right now works out, it's going to be really freaking cool.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll opine that I think what would be really cool for you guys is going to Europe. And I know that's a tough thing, but it's my opinion. you guys would slaughter it there. Like the Graveshadow sound, what you guys do, in my opinion at least. So.
One of my favorite compliments I've ever gotten was when we were on the Serenity Arcona run, and we only did 5 dates on that show, and our last one was in Phoenix, and we got off we showed up to the venue for load-in, and I'm going to do a very terrible Russian accent, but their tour manager comes up to me and he just goes like, I listen to your music. I like some of it, not all of it. You should be in Europe. And I was like, that's the best I could have asked for as far as the compliment goes. It's amazing. So no, that is definitely a goal. I think we all want that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just a matter of making it work and whether or not, I mean, it's, I think logistics are always like the biggest challenge to doing anything with music. But if
and it's a risk. I mean, any time you do something like that, it's a big risk. So I can
financial risk, and then also with visas being a big, especially for European bands trying to come into the U.S. Yeah, no, that's a big time and money risk.
Yeah. Also, the conflict in Ukraine going on right
Sure.
now
Absolutely.
definitely adds another challenge.
In France right now as well. The unrest in France, which would have been country, it's still in our sights.
Yeah,
Germany and France it's where I'm locked in at. So, hoping to see that soon.
Yeah.
Again, I know you all would kill it. Finally, how can fans purchase music and merchandise from Graveshadow, including the latest album, The Uncertain Hour?
Right. So right now we are operating off of Bandcamp. So you can find us on Bandcamp, and you can purchase the new record, and you can purchase merchandise from there as well. As far as listening and streaming is concerned, we are on every social media platform where you can listen and stream music. So that means you can find us on Apple Music, you can find us on YouTube, you can find us on Spotify, you can find us everywhere. Definitely really helps to get those streams, and it also helps if you buy a record directly from the band from Bandcamp, as that those funds go to us to help support our future endeavors.
I need cigarettes.
Well, I'm going to get my merchandise from you guys today at the merch booth following the show after I've rocked out with you guys, and I'm so looking forward to it. And thank you so much for taking so much time with me. Of all the bands on the bill, you guys are top for me, so I'm so excited to see you guys.
Awesome, man.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.